Hello, good afternoon. It's about, let's have a look, 5 past 5 in the afternoon, and it's the day before Good Friday. So we're just running up to the Easter holidays, 2023. And what I'd like to talk about to begin with is the fact that I bought 2 more locomotives for my collection. Now, the first one we'll be concentrating on is Princess Margaret Rose. Now, it's a locomotive that's special to me in some ways, and I'll go through that later as to what as to why that is. But what I thought I'd do first of all is take you through some of the pre sort of running checks that I do before I actually press a locomotive into service, and some of these checks I've learned how to do through a bitter experience. Okay, so we'll go through that quite shortly. Now, as soon as I can, be right back with you, and we'll get right down to it. Okay. Right, now we're now looking at Princess Margaret Rose upside down in a servicing cradle, and it's something I would recommend you to get if you don't own one yet. Now, what I've actually done before we start running this one on the layout is I've checked all of the crank pins have been tightened up properly. Now, on this particular locomotive, they are tightened up correctly, and the crank pins these have got little hexagonal heads on, and there's one there, and then one on the front wheel, and the same on the other side. And what I use for that is one of these, which is the nut spinner or spanner. Okay, it's got hexagonal ends on each end, and that's a check that the crank pins are tight, simply because in the past I have had crank pins come out, and that's not very nice when that happens, especially on a locomotive like this, where potentially you will get all kinds of valve gear flailing around, and is really a world of misery you want to avoid. Okay, so that's all fine there. Now, what I checked as well, now this is a locomotive which is this is not the one which is in the present Hornby catalogue. This is the previous model, as far as I'm given to understand. So it was in production for quite some time. Now, what I've just noticed is one small little problem, and we'll see if we can correct that now. It's not essential. I think the locomotive was running okay with it anyway, but let's just see. Bear with me. And for working on locomotives, I've got this scroll over here, and it's got various removable heads tips. So this is the that's just in focus there, I think. And then you've got this is like a kind of a crosshead one, small crosshead. Okay, but what we've got here, I'll see if I can. If I can't get this on now, I'll do it later. There we go. Yeah, it's all it was. What I've done now, I noticed that the brake rigging's already been fitted, and it had come out just there. So I put the brake rigging back in. That just saves any running problems here. Now, a few features which I've noticed on this locomotive, which I particularly like, and that's just bear with me just a moment. I'm going to good. Yeah, sorry about that. I just put my phone on to do not disturb, so we're not interrupted by lots of bleeps and everything else. Right, so yeah, some of the features I like about this locomotive. Now, on the more modern 462 Pacific locomotives produced by Hornby, they've got a fixed pony truck at the back with flangeless wheels. Okay, these have actually got a flange. The back pony truck actually articulates and moves, so you get flange wheels, and the rear wheels will actually be directly on the track and not floating above the track like I've seen on some locomotives like this. Okay, like I say, it's a 62 Pacific locomotive. Now I don't know if you can see it just here, but this something to be watching out for when servicing. This one's got a little cable coming from there round to the crank pin, and that's a speedo drive. Okay, that's a speedo drive. So if you don't undo that before removing the body, you'll rip the speedo drive from the body. Okay, so that's something to look out for. Now, something which I've also noticed, which came in useful, I don't know if we can see this, but just get that in focus first. Oh yeah, just here, you can actually access the drive cog for the wheels. So that's one of the cogs which go run from the motor to the wheels, and that's actually accessible through the base plate. That's something you don't get these days. Nowadays you've got to remove the base plate to be able to get at that. I've only put a little blob of Hobby Lube on there. It's called Hobby Lube body grease. Okay, some people use that, or silicone grease. And also what I've done is, I'll just turn the phone round, I'll just show you. I've got the service sheet with this one, so it actually tells you everywhere where the locomotive should be oiled, denoted by red dots. So that's really all the moving parts in the running gear, the valve gear, and all the axles. But it does say not to oil the tender axles. So what I've done is I've given it a good oiling. On all the crank pins, let's get a pointer, done it on all the crank pins here, 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 and all moving parts on each side of the locomotive I've actually oiled. And I've oiled the axles as well. See the axles there. So now I've checked that none of the valve gears loose. I did have one, I've had two locomotives now where the valve gear had popped out, possibly in transit. But on this locomotive, everything was perfect. So that really, in a nutshell, is a kind of checks I would make. I've checked everything's present and correct on there, no pieces fallen off, okay. So the next time you'll see this locomotive is actually on the track, and we'll see if we can get her running. Now I'm going to do a separate video on my other acquisition, which you'll see on the layout beside it quite shortly. Okay, so let's just tidy up, and then we'll put this one out on the track for you. Okay, right, so this is the magnificent Princess Margaret Rose, actually on the track now. Now we need to check it's on the track. There's been no mishaps there, so let's just take her forward. No, she runs forward. Okay, and we check she works in reverse. It was described as a good runner, and it is. It came from a dealer called Furness Models. Okay, so quite happy with this. It's very, very good runner. Of course, as a precaution, I've lubricated this locomotive in all the places which were indicated by the Hornby instruction leaflet. Now we're just going to bring the carriages round, and then we can have a coupling. Right, that was quite a satisfying clonk there, watching that one go on. So let's take a little look. Now, this locomotive is quite closely related to the other locomotive I bought fairly recently, and we'll go into that quite shortly as well. Okay, so we'll have a look at its close relative in due course. Let's just bring this one out onto the track now. I'm just going to focus on the There we go. Perfect. Right, so we've got a perfectly good runner of a locomotive. It runs over points, I've checked that earlier. Goes forwards and backwards quite nicely. Now, some other things which you need to check, it's all complete, okay. When I looked at the actual photos of this, if you get a locomotive that's LMS, they've got some rather sort of like largest metal safety valves that go on there. This one's got 4 by the look of it, and I checked in the actual pictures and the adverts for it on eBay that they were all present. Okay, and they are in fact present and correct on the model I received, so that's fine. So no missing parts. The only thing which came out of this locomotive was it was fitting with the loco crew and the fireman came loose. Okay, that was something which would have been fitted by a previous owner, and we don't know how long it's been since this locomotive's been last used. Now, something which I would say is perfectly smooth, useful runner. Now, to give you an idea of the age of this locomotive and the vintage, it came in polystyrene packaging. I know some of you are not interested in that, but some of you, it's part of the buying experience, and certainly part of the buying experience for me. Okay, and let's have a quick look. I came in a box with this lovely picture of the locomotive on there. Absolutely fine. And the model we're looking at, if I can have a look at the insert, is R2559 462 Princess class locomotive, Princess Margaret Rose. Princess Margaret Rose. Now the other locomotive which is preserved of this class is Princess Elizabeth. Of course, Princess Elizabeth is our late Queen. Sadly, our Queen passed away fairly recently, and Princess Margaret, or Princess Margaret Rose, that locomotive was named after Queen Elizabeth's younger sister. So that gives you some idea of what these locomotives were, and they were actually given these names in the 1930s. That's when these locomotives were actually built. Now we'll talk about this class of locomotive quite briefly as well. The London Midland Scottish Railway LMS Princess Royal class, a class of express passenger 462 steam locomotive designed by William Stanier. And 12 examples were built at Crew Works between 1933 and 1935 for use on the West Coast Main Line and to are preserved. Now these are related to the Great Western Railway 6000 class, known as the King class. We've got a King just down here, also by Hornby King. We'll be able to look at that in another video. Now William Stanier actually came from the Great Western Railway, and he went to work on the LMS, and he was largely influenced by a lot of the Great Western locomotives. For example, the Black 5 is very much influenced by the Hall class, and this locomotive is actually very much influenced by the King class of locomotive. Now basically, this is very, very similar to a King, apart from the fact that it was given a larger firebox and an extra pair of wheels. So a King is a 460 locomotive, whereas this one is a 462. And I mean, gaining inspiration from other builders. I mean, In my opinion, there's nothing wrong with that. That was going on ever since the beginning of the first steam locomotives, really. Inspiration was gained. I mean, it's not a question of copying each other. In fact, when the Midland Railway wanted to build an equivalent of the Castle class of locomotive, they were denied the drawings, and they actually copied never copied, but I think they worked for the Lord Nelson class. So the LMS we use other designs, whereas the GWR in the early 1900s at least lent on some French designs which they tried. 462 Atlantics. Like I say, so that's how we got this Princess Princess Margaret Rose. Now, Princess Margaret Rose, this is a locomotive which is special to me because I've actually seen this locomotive in steam in real life, okay? And I saw this at Temple Station back in 1995. And I'll show you the living proof quite shortly. We just bear with me just a few moments. We're going to go to my photo album, and I'll see if we can have a quick look at the photos I took at the time. I'm just going to stop Princess Margaret Rose over the top end of the layout there. And we may have to go handheld briefly, but we'll just show you. Now, bear in mind, the photographs I took here was with a manual camera. Back in the day, back in the mid-1990s, yes, there were autofocus cameras, but the camera that I was using was fully manual. Now we're just going to come off the tripod a second, so excuse any jerkiness. And here we are. Okay, that's Princess Margaret Rose on the 18th of March 1995, and it's actually approaching the station. See it there? Getting closer there. Try and get into focus. Okay, so I was actually directly there, and you can see there was quite a crowd there to see Princess Margaret Rose. There we are, magnificent now. In exactly the same livery as the Hornby model. How about that then? 46203. We'll check that in a minute with the model. Okay, Princess Margaret Rose. I don't know how clearly you can see these photos. Obviously, it's a photo I took in 1995. And I'm getting into focus with it. There we go. Princess Margaret Rose. To that steam coming out with it. There's a speedo drive. Look. The speedo drive is actually present on the model. There we are, another photo of Princess Margaret Rose there. Lots of steam. Quite a crowd on the platform there. And we'll just turn over, just see what's over here. Oh, there we go. So we're getting quite near the end now. So I thought I'd take you through these photos of this because it's quite interesting. This is what made me want this model. Okay, I've actually, on that day, there we are, there's a nameplate of it. The Royal Scot 46203. smoke box detail and everything else. And there's a front view there. It's not there's any glare coming off the thing. You can see my video light there. There we are, back on the nameplate again. Okay, so that's the photos I took of Princess Margaret Rose back in 1995. Now we're just going to go back onto the tripod again. So sorry about the movement coming round. We're recording there now. Now I know that the model which is in the Hornby catalogue right now is more detailed. There's a comparison between this model and the latest model from Hornby. That's actually on Jennifer Kirk's channel. She did a comparison between this model and the current generation. I do believe also Sam's Train's done a good review of either of these two locomotives. So let's get back on track. And you must agree what a magnificent sight this is. I mean, I am of course a Great Western fan, but that doesn't mean to say that I don't take a shine to locomotives from other regions. And this Princess Margaret Rose, I mean, the photos, and looking at the model here, I mean, I hope that I've gone some way to doing this particular locomotive justice. Absolutely superb. It's putting 3 BR Mark 1 coaches, and they're sort of Midland as well, so this is probably going to be a good representation. Certainly this is with the late Crest. This would have been the locomotive between about 1956-57 until it was actually withdrawn. I think it was withdrawn in the early 1960s. Let's take a look. Princess Margaret Rose, built on the 1st of July 1935, dates withdrawn 20th of October 1962, preserved though by the Princess Royal Class Locomotive Trust. Now I've not actually looked at the motor on this particular one because it's running so smoothly. And what I do probably have a precautionary look, but it's a little bit more involved to take the body off with that speedo drive. Also I need to be very careful doing that. I think possibly it may involve undoing a crank pin, so that's something I'll do probably later on. Right, so I hope you're enjoying this so far. Obviously we're running this on my little layout here, which is 6 feet by 4 feet. There will be developments about this in the future, which you'll have to wait and see. I'm in the planning stage and the thinking stage at the moment. I've got to be honest, I mean I've been running this now for a couple of years, this little layout, and okay, fair enough, it's a bit basic I know, but it's a bed top layout, and I think it's quite a good solution for anybody that's got limited space. And another thing about it is mobile. If push comes to shove, I know this is nowhere near the standard what you would wish to take to an exhibition, but if it was, I could literally take this apart in about 10 minutes, quarter of an hour max, and I can have this in the boot of the car. And that's why I like to keep my that's why I've kept things as they are. And in fact when I actually build another layout, which I will do in the near future, when it's better weather for working outside, I will say build a bigger layout, but it will also be a mobile layout. So in other words, it will be one that can be taken to pieces and moved. There we go to the country station there. Beautiful, look at that. Now the next time you'll see this locomotive is going to be on the Lazy Susan, and we're going to have a quick look at this one closer and personal, and then we'll wrap things up. Right, now this is a beautiful Princess Margaret Rose, up close and personal here. You can see it's a rather long locomotive. In fact, it just about fits on the Lazy Susan. Okay. Lazy Susan, some people ask me as a result of other videos why it's called a Lazy Susan. One of the theories is it's named after its inventor, but basically it's a labour saving device, and I think it was made for serving food. I used a very much larger version of this at a Chinese restaurant a few weeks ago as well, a very nice Chinese meal, but really it is a revolving table. And for me, of course, it means I can revolve the locomotive without having to pick it up. So, very advantageous for me. And that's what it is, a Lazy Susan. It's a labour saving device. So, nothing wrong with a labour saving device, is there? Okay, so what we got here now is a lovely Crimson Lake livery. The number 46203. And have Hornby got this? Have Hornby got this? I mean, now bear in mind, I actually have seen this locomotive up close and personal for real. And yes, I would say so. Yes, very nice model indeed. It's everything that I would have hoped for in it, really. And I can almost imagine a miniature 176 version of me being stood on that platform now taking those photos. There's the nameplate, Princess Margaret Rose. You can see all the Volve gear there and everything else. Very nice representation of that. And on these, like I say, you've got that advantage, a real advantage of the swivelling pony chuck on the back. That actually moves. I don't want to get in the way of your view actually, but I don't know how best to demonstrate this. That actually swivels. So you see it move there, look? So, you've got fully flanged wheels here. I mean, some people might say the pony chuck on the back is not such an accurate representation. Well, then again, it's resources for courses really, plus and minus points, because the more modern 462 versions, especially from Hornby, those back wheels don't move. That's all static. And there's no flanges on there, and it floats above the track a lot of the time. Either way, whatever your own personal preference is, that to me is an advantage. Let's turn the locomotive round. Again, very much similar. Got the pipework running down the boiler there. Handrails are separately fitted part. Fully glazed cab, of course. As we go along, so much to think about, so much to show you. Lovely representation of the tender there, with the lining, the wheels and everything else down there where the wheels are. Beautiful. The white things are here. There's one here, and there's another one here, and the same on the other side. That's for warnings for electrical cables overhead, I believe. So this is probably a representation of how the model looks in preservation as well. Something else to bear in mind. That's a reversing rod on this side, and that's the side where the driver goes, okay? A common mistake, an easily made mistake made by some modelers, of putting the driver and the fireman the wrong way round. On this particular one, yes, it is a left-hand drive model, okay? I'll just separate the tender away and we'll have a look at the cab. Oops, at ease. Let's move the tender over, that's freewheeling. And you'll see there's no actual cab detail, but I think the actual previous owner of this actually did some painting of the of the crew, loco crew here, and that's not a bad representation of the loco crew there. And that kind of loco crew always kind of livens up the cab there. We can see it's not a painted cab on this. R2559 1006. You see that on there? So that's when this locomotive was manufactured. Hornby always used to put that stamp on there so you can tell when the locomotive was made. Okay, so this is from 2006, and this is a lot of people say that the sort of early to mid 2000s it was one of the golden ages for Hornby. These sort of for their locomotives. I mean, I think you'll agree it's a beautiful model, really. I mean, the more modern one that they've got out now, it's got even more detail. It's got a painted cab and everything else. Let's put the tender back over there. Beautiful. What else do you get? Right, now, because it's from the mid-2000s, so I'll try and get in focus here now. That's it. The smoke box dart, that's moulded on. And I think the lamp irons are moulded on as well. But you've got a representation, you can see that, but there's a representation of the two inner cylinders there, right above the buffer beam. And yes, one of the questions a lot of people will ask, has it got sprung buffers? Yes, it has. Okay, we're going very, very close to the camera here, so I don't know if we're in focus. There we go. So, sorry, this is rocking a bit here. Not very stable, but yes, we have got sprung buffers. And for a top view, I think what I might do is just tilt the locomotive slightly towards you if I can. No, let's come off the tripod. And that's what the locomotive looks like from above. Okay, the coal load a little bit on the chunky side, but you know, for its time, perfectly fine. You see also on the back of the tender there is the warning sign for the electricity, and also you can see there the safety valves. Okay, single chimney, and on the back of the locomotive as well, yeah, sprung buffers. You do get sprung buffers. Okay, absolutely fine. So what we're going to do next, we'll see this locomotive. It's actually out on the track, okay, and then we'll wind things up for you. Now, I'm sorry, but before we go back on the track, there's something I wanted to show you. Well, I've got the locomotive up here. That's the coupling between the tender and the locomotive. I'll get this in focus for you. My camera's refused. Oh, there it is, in focus now. That's a rather older style coupling there with the prongs coming up. That's not the same as the one with the plug, okay? We just can't get this thing to focus. Come on, camera. There we go. So you can see down there the actual drawbar there with the two electrical contacts. So you don't get the plug on there, but the advantage is they're quite easily detached from each other, okay? So we'll be moving on to end this video in just a moment. Right, so here we go then. So there's our Princess Margaret Rose, just starting off, and then there we are, racing on its way to Scotland. There we go. What a locomotive, beautiful. Let's say, just to recap then. Okay, fair enough. You can tell it's from an earlier age, the model. Okay, from the mid 2000s, 2006 this was from. The only thing that really gives it away for me is really that the coal load is a little bit chunkier, but that's not too bad. It looks okay to me. For its time, it's absolutely fine. But it's a magnificent representation of this locomotive. I mean, for someone who's actually witnessed this locomotive close up and personal at Temperley Station, I would say that this model is everything that I was hoping it would be. Now, if you like what you've seen, please press that like button and subscribe, and press that alarm bell, the ding dong bell, and you'll be made aware of all future videos which I will make. Now, on that note, I want to say thank you very, very much for your interest. Thank you for sticking with me to the end. I shall wish you farewell and goodbye.